Hi guys, it's Mr. Dorsey again. Um, Today we're going to talk about multiplying integer rules. And yesterday I had you do the Edpuzzle on multiplying integers, and that Edpuzzle had multiplying and dividing. The only confusing part about it was, um, for some reason, Edpuzzle changed the position of the questions. So maybe you got the right answers, and maybe you were confused because I posted a second copy of the YouTube video. So yesterday was to introduce you to multiplying and dividing integers. Today, I'm going to get in a little more deeply in this and give you some opportunities to practice. And we'll go through them together and discuss them. So you see on your screen, I have multiplying integer rules. Couple of things. First of all, doesn't show real well, but my mouse, my cursor, the first rule is if you take a positive times a positive, that is positive. And if you have a negative times a negative, that's also positive. The only time it's negative is when you combine them. If you have a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative, either direction you're going, those will become negatives. So again, two positives multiplied together gives you a positive. Two negatives multiplied together gives you a negative, or gives you a positive. And then if you combine a positive and a negative multiplied together gives you a negative. Either direction you go. So okay, so let's take a look at a couple of examples of that. In the first situation, we had a positive times a positive. So if I take a positive 3 times a positive 4, you're familiar with that from all the math you did in elementary school up till this point. Focus is a little off. I don't know why. I apologize. So you're familiar with that idea. A positive times a positive is a positive. And what you would always do, you knew that 3 times 4 was 12. And because there was no signs, these were positive. And because you put no sign in your answer way back in elementary school, these were always positive. So that is the first case. Again, a positive times a positive. Well, that's pretty sloppy, isn't it? Let's fix that. Positive times a positive equals a positive. Okay, now the second example. Let's try negative 3 times a negative 4. And again, you'll probably remember from the rules that I just showed you that these are a negative times a negative is a positive. So you just do the same thing as before. 3 times 4 is 12. And then you look at the sign. Not unlike same sign, add, and keep in terms of looking at the signs. You multiply. The multiplication remains the same as you learned in that Edpuzzle video yesterday. But a negative times a negative is a positive. Now remember that. If you remember it here. Finally got it focused for you. All right, now let's look at another one. Now let's look at negative 3 times a positive 4. So let's do that over here. A negative times a positive. You may remember from the previous screen, I have this form with the rules put in your Google Classroom. But you may remember from the previous screen, a negative times a positive is a negative. So if you look here, 3 times 4 is still 12. But here in this case, we have a negative times a positive. This becomes a negative 12. And then let's do one more. Let's do a positive 3 times a negative 4 equals. And again, a positive times a negative equals a negative. So again, 3 times 4 is still 12. I used the same numbers just so you could see the different examples. And a negative times a positive is negative. So in the first case, a positive times a positive is positive. Second case of negative times a negative is positive. Third case of negative times a positive is negative. And the fourth case of positive times a negative is negative. And you know you can multiply either direction, so these are really the same thing as one another. But you see it in each of the four cases.